Hello everybody and welcome to the next webinar that is about all things secret agent society. And we've got a ripper of a topic. I don't quite know how we'll get this done in an hour. This could be a whole one-day event, but thank us all later that it's not that long and that detailed. 7 tips for financially efficient SAS groups. So welcome. It is me. I'm Cathy Love. I'm an allied health business coach, but we also have Kathleen Davey. Kathleen, introduce yourself. It's just so good to have you here.
Hi, Cathy. And thank you for joining us to deliver the content for this webinar. Those of you who don't know me, but I think most people would, I'm the Chief Operating Officer and Clinical Psychologist for the Social Skills Training Institute, here where we distribute the Secret Agent Society, and we've got these series of support webinars for our SAS providers, and Cathy is again helping us out with this one on running financially efficient groups, which I know will be really sought after by a lot of our different organisations.
Beautiful. Alrighty. So we know that people are going to be tuning into this webinar from all over the world, and our endeavour is to make it completely available and useful regardless of what language you're working in and what country you're in and all the rest of it. There is a little bit of a proviso on that with this particular webinar, in that down the track in a few slides time you will see that we do get a little bit Australian centric, in that we are putting a little bit of energy towards the NDIS. So I guess we can apologise and forewarn you, but the principles and some of the things that we're going to be talking about, I suspect, are completely transferable to the funding schemes that you might be operating within anywhere in the world. Kathleen's probably got a much better working knowledge of that as well. So
I was just thinking, as you said that, Cathy, it is very true. I know a lot of the conversations I've had, whether it's people in America, Canada, or the UK or Ireland in particular, I think it's very similar systems that operate in some ways.
Well, the NDIS is an insurance-based scheme, and increasingly insurance-based schemes are having an impact on the way allied health is delivered. So, yeah, we'll have to leave you to do a bit of the translation, but I'm sure it's going to be all super, super useful. Right, we need to kind of talk about a bit of a disclaimer here. And this is a formal piece that I actually have to read out so that we manage everybody's expectations really, really assertively and appropriately. Any material, content or resources shared and discussed in this SAS support webinar is general in nature and is used to guide service planning discussions and support only. The Social Skills Training Institute encourages all participants to think critically and appraise the content for their organisational and personal circumstances. The Social Skills Training Institute does not necessarily endorse content shared and accepts no liability for any consequences resulting from adhering to the content shared in this webinar. So that's very, very formal, but I think we both agree it's absolutely important as well. So we'll leave that with you to digest. Right, so fair to say this is a webinar conversation about money. So I hope you're all personally comfortable to talk about this aspect of what we do and essentially the financial reality of the SAS program. And I have my ear to the allied health business ground all day, every day. And I guess I do, it has to be said, I do hear that it can be really hard to run groups. I don't think I've ever met an allied health professional who doesn't, or an educator for that matter, who doesn't believe of the absolute power of running groups, the amazing value that working with children in groups has. But the logistics, I tell you, the logistics can sometimes really, really stack up to really make people second guess and really, really question the how, the what, the where, the why of running group programs. So they are a lot to organise. They can be really, really hard work, particularly the first couple of groups when you're kind of mentally juggling the content, but you're also kind of unsure about the financial reality of what you're actually delivering and the viability of it, I guess a little bit more long term. So it's not unusual for me to hear that there's a bit of a professional dilemma. We know that groups are amazing. They provide just such a natural social context for kiddos to be practicing and developing and maintaining their skills, but back of house, there is a financial reality that also can't be ignored. And when I say all of this, I'm really not putting the SAS Group program under the particular microscope. I think this happens for groups more generally. And yeah, it's not even unusual for me to hear that when people have crunched the numbers on running groups, that they're actually running at a loss. And that's not what we want you to experience in delivering the SAS Group. We also hear that there are constraints with funding agencies, funding bodies, insurance schemes, whatever, the people that perhaps have bags of money that might be contributing to the kiddos coming into programs like SAS as well. So it ends up needing a good dose of persistence and a good dose of creativity and a really, really good dose of financial confidence to be able to bring this mission together of that belief that groups are an amazing place for kids to learn, but also the confidence to be able to really work the numbers and make sure that the numbers work, but that lovely creativity and belief that we can bring the amazing SAS program over the line in a way that is absolutely good for everybody. So it was really this, this combination of what we hear, both Kathleen and I, and what we know the SAS Group to be completely capable of, that has really driven the agenda on this particular webinar. So as best I possibly can, I have somewhat categorized these 7 tips for group program, SAS program profitability. I'm going to give you a moment to read them. What you're probably already thinking is there are more. And yes, there are more tips. And you're probably also thinking, oh goodness, how do each of these even stand alone? Great question. I'm sure if we're in the room together, the hands would be flying up on that one already. And you are absolutely right. What you're going to find as we work through each of these 7 tips is that they're kind of at times pretty tangled up with each other. And that is the reality of running programs like this, and the financial reality that there are a lot of moving parts. And you can only do your best. You can only start to think like a boss in delivering these groups. You can only start to gather information. You can only start to ask yourself tough questions of, how do we do it better? How do we bill it differently next time? How do we make it quicker? How do we make it more remarkable? How do we preserve the integrity of the program and still get the client outcomes, but perhaps with different models, so on and so forth? So these are not finite tips. Your job is to pick the bits that are super, super relevant for you and to implement and to measure and to make the changes you need, that you need to kind of get everything that you possibly need out of delivering the SAS programs.
I'm loving the 7 tips, Kathy. It's a really good selection. Very relevant.
Yeah, let it be said, it was not easy to distill these 7 tips, because I think we could have had 77 tips and been here for a day and a half. So I'm anticipating that there's enough juice under each of these tips to kind of just get some sparks flying. All right, here's the first one. Number 1, understanding the cost of delivery. And let's just kind of define what I actually mean by that. This is the exact, as close to exact as you can possibly manage. This is what it costs you the business owner, the head of department, whoever is financially responsible for delivering this program. This is what it costs you to deliver the program. It might be known as COGS, cost of goods. It might be known as cost of service. It might have slightly different language in terms of where you hang out and also the accountability that you have to yourself or your line managers as well. But what we do know from the SAS is that it has got really pretty firm and pretty well, not pretty, really firm, really well-defined boundaries about what the program is. There's really no wriggle room. There's really no vague edges about what's included and what isn't. You guys have all done the training. You know what is in the box. So that, in many ways, actually makes it quite a bit easier to be able to determine what the cost of delivering the program is. And I guess you will know better than I do in your particular scenario, but some of those costs are going to include the training time and the costs associated with the training time. You may be wanting to recoup that sooner rather than later in the delivery of your programs. That's up for you. You might be absorbing that elsewhere in your budget and in your programs. Staff time is the really large obvious one, and I have in my notes time in uppercase letters because this is a time intensive program and it's going to take your time. Potentially it's going to take the people who are delivering the program. It's going to take their time. It is going to perhaps take time from some people who are helping you with the marketing. It might take some time from perhaps some admin people that you have access to in terms of setting things up and building systems and invoicing and making sure things are paid as well. So there's probably quite a few people that will be contributing their time, and it will be a mighty fine thing for you to capture the amount of time from each of those people so that you're getting a really realistic measure of the amount of people power, aka salary allocation, that is going in to deliver this program. There also might be some marketing costs. You might be spending a certain amount on Facebook or a certain amount on whatever your social media platform of choice is. You might have developed some marketing collateral. You might have done something a little bit different and extra from the program materials, promotional materials that are available with the program as well. You might really be wanting to dig in and allocate some room rent, any other resources that might be needed in marketing the program, delivering the program, and in the follow-up time afterwards as well. You might be wanting to capture some of that. There might also be some extra time and personnel and resources needed to work with families in a slightly different or extra kind of way before the program and during and after the program as well. So same Cathy, goes with educators. Go for it, Kathleen.
Just help out there. An example that comes up a lot, that people ask a lot, is how to deal with people who are sick, who miss a session, how to do a makeup session, or a makeup may not be how everyone calls it, but a
catch-up session. Yep.
A catch-up session.
Oh, of course.
So that would be an example of additional family follow-up that you may want to factor into your cost of goods or cost of delivery, or you may not. It may be separate. So that's an example.
Yep. And even in that scenario, thank you, there's going to be some admin time. There might be your time in terms of the decision making. Then there'll be time with the facilitator to actually deliver that, and so on and so forth. So yeah, that's a great example. So you're also wanting to think of the child to adult ratio and the salary points of the people, of the facilitators that are delivering the program. There may be a lead facilitator. There might be an assistant coming in at a different salary point. There might be a student or an allied health assistant, whatever models you're experimenting with locally where you're delivering all of this. I know that it's possible to purchase the family kits in kind of a bulk kind of amount. So that is a time and probably a cost saving. I'm not across all of those costs, but you know, that's something that is also going to have to be included in the cost of goods, in the cost of delivering the program as well.
So it's a good point, Kathy, as we do have different points depending on, to assist different size services basically, and their ability to, some people have the ability to pre-purchase in advance, like to predict how many children, for example, all year their service or their multiple service sites would run it, and they might be able to purchase the family kit, say 100 of them at a really high rate, and then some people are only purchasing them as they've got people signed up for, say, a group of 6 kids. And so we actually have our first bulk prices at 6 to help those people, and then there's another rate for 100.
Okay, so the more you buy, the lower the price?
Yes.
Got it.
Yes.
Got it. Alrighty, so what has floated past my desk in preparing for this webinar is that the SSTI have actually, they're really kind of lending you a hand on this particular piece, and that they've got some documentation that helps people delivering the program understand where some of the time is going to fall in the pre-program and during the program as well. And I got to say, it's a super duper document, and it's really, really detailed. And I can imagine that it's been built on the back of a lot of feedback and feed forward and suggestion as well. So it's quite specific in terms of what sort of staff might be allocating and needing to allocate what sort of hours at different points in the program as well. So a really, really cool document. Where is that document to be found? Is it on the portal?
Great question, Kathy. Yeah. So at the moment, you would go to your portal and you would look for Group Delivery Guide, I think is the name of the button. And very soon there'll be more items under the NDIS and funding section of the portal, where there'll be more of those templates.
Okay, so that's a good one. Really, really good. Really, really great detail. Saved me a fortune knowing that that has already been done. So dig that one out. You may also need to be working with people from the finance or accounts department. If you're in the private sector, it could be good to kind of crack out the calculator and sit with the bookkeeper or accountant, so that you have some different financial eyes across the program that you're putting out to the market as well. Please don't forget to include your time on it, particularly if you're in the early phases of delivering it and it's your first or your second or maybe your third kind of run through. I would anticipate that your time would potentially reduce as you're bringing in team to kind of deliver, but it's just a little bit of a time trap that you don't always include your own time. So love them or loathe them, I suspect there may be a spreadsheet in your SAS delivery future. And once again, every time you run through the program, that spreadsheet will be quicker and easier, and it's going to be more interesting. But please reach out and get some help from people like a bookkeeper, finance manager, somebody who's great with numbers. If this isn't your strong suit, it's a beautiful opportunity to learn how to look at such a great structured program like SAS and really learn to crunch the numbers behind the scenes as well. And, you know, that's the thing about business. You know, this is just a great example of perhaps where else you could be kind of getting your head into the numbers and really starting to analyze and understand the viability of the programs that you're delivering.
And I might just note there, we're aiming to have another webinar by a financial specialist on the nitty-gritty of numbers as well. So look out for that one.
Yep. Alrighty, so I did confess to Kathleen that this is my favourite slide in the whole presentation. Can't imagine why I would love this one so much. I just don't know which one to eat first. Number 2, packaging and pricing the SAS program. So what we do know is the SAS is super, super structured, and there's amazing compliance around each of the elements and amazing support documents, and the whole recipe is, you know, kind of right in the box. But that's for you to actually understand what is in that box and to understand the features of the program, but also the benefits of the program. super relevant for marketing. There's a whole separate marketing webinar that you can wrap around your ears as well. But I guess it kind of brings the question to my mind as a business coach is, how can you value add to the SAS program? What more could you add to make it even more complete and even more remarkable? And how does this actually impact what you would want to be selling or invoicing the program out at? So I've got some really potentially out there ideas, and it's just really to be provocative and to get you thinking. You don't have to do this, but it's just for you to think about maxing out the structure of the program. What would happen if you had an event where you talked about the features and the benefits of the program? What would happen if you offered to run a closed Facebook program for the duration of the program? Remember, you've got that 6 months afterwards. 6 months? Yeah, afterwards. What would happen if you were offering to do Facebook Lives within that closed group? This is adding value. This is communication. This is customer experience and engagement.
Kathy, with that, are you imagining that's with the families?
Yeah, it's with the mums and dads. Yep. Very much opt-in. You can't make people do it, but I'm thinking that there are some time savings there in that you can share messages in a one-to-many mode rather than the doorstop conversations. There's a whole slide about the doorstop conversations coming up.
And just to put it in a specific part of the program, that I can see that fitting really well, those of you who are choosing to deliver the program where the parent sessions are 4 2-hour sessions over the whole course of the program, as opposed to the weekly ones at the same time as the kids. So if you're doing the 4 2-hour parent sessions, I could see that closed Facebook or live Facebook
Both, yeah,
to be a really good way to give quick reminders to everyone all at once of what they need to do week by week in between.
Yep. It's an interesting one. It's popping up in all sorts of places, this sort of value add concept and this closed Facebook customer communication kind of thinking. What would happen if you provided some extra and above and beyond parent coaching sessions? What would happen if you provided some extra above and beyond parent video meetings, whether Skype or Zoom? What would happen if you had a WhatsApp group? Is that an adjunct or is that same or different from Facebook? What would you and your team and the participants in the SAS program, what's their preference? How can you kind of make the meetings and the catch-ups with teachers easier, different, even more spectacular? Is that an opportunity for video conferencing, video meetings, bringing parents in, meeting with educators? It's all up to your imagination. Don't ever let the tech be a barrier. Come up with the idea first and own it. And there's always tech and help with tech to get this stuff done. What would happen if you had a portal, a cloud-based portal that the parents could log into so that they could get extra different resources? If there were some extra different handouts, if the handouts were there, if there were some video resources, would that be interesting? Would that change the outcomes? Would that change the time and the commitment and the communication needs that I can imagine would be sort of extra on top of the program delivery as well? And what were you going to say? You were just about to jump in.
I was going to say, if anyone is having a little anxiety attack about that last suggestion,
eat a chocolate.
Rest assured it is actually on our to-do list as a business and product development hub for SAS to try and do some of that digitisation and streamlining of the parent component, parent resources. I'm not necessarily promising anything or saying when, but it is on the to-do list as part of our digital planning for the future.
Yeah, okay. It's kind of the way to go. So, and you don't have to do all of those things. You don't have to do any of them. It's just thinking about what is in the box. We know the SAS program is solid. What else can you add that not legitimizes, but perhaps gets you thinking about how you invoice for this and how you bill it out. And go.
I could share another example of, so there's a particular service in Australia, they're actually running an applied research study on this, where they're running, as well as the SAS program, with the same group of parents, they're running parent therapy.
Ooh, is that what they're actually calling it?
Yeah, so and this is in a child youth mental health type setting. So it is where there is a lot of mental health and potentially therapy needs across the family. So something like that, where you've got a certain group of people together doing one program, you could adjunct it with another that may help to value add.
Yep. I guess the message I'm kind of trying to get here, and I'm just going to be super blunt about it now, is that if the SAS program that you're running is 60 or 90 minutes, that doesn't mean that that's exactly what you have to invoice and bill for. And that increasingly I'm hearing that allied health business owners, who are the guys that I get to talk with pretty regularly, are really looking at, the group session might be 60 minutes, but invoicing for 90 minutes because they've got other pieces that they're wrapping in around the program that helps the efficiency, that helps the value, that deepens the outcomes, that strengthens the customer experience as well. So I'm not suggesting for a moment that you're unethical or you're bullish in your billing, but for you to really ask yourself the questions, what's in the box? What else can we put in the box that's going to totally dial it up, that you are super, super comfortable and knowledgeable that you can invoice for as well. So yes, I'm thinking, I'm hearing from afar, but people can't afford it or the market can't tolerate it. And I, as a business coach, I always question that statement. So if you're thinking it, I'm sensing it and I'm questioning it already. If you're thinking along those lines, what it tells me to say back to you is think about your awesome skill set. Think about the value you bring to families' lives. Get reattached to the outcomes that you and the SAS program will achieve for these kiddos, and the long-term, short and long-term life impact that programs like this, combined with your skill set, combined with what else you're putting in the box, is going to have. Did that sound like a rant? I think it probably did.
No, it sounded like good tips to me, Cathy.
Is there anything you would like to add, Kathleen, onto this particular slide?
I think you've given a good list of ideas. I can't think of anything else straight off the top of my head, apart from the application points that I've made. So I think it was good ideas to get everyone thinking about different ways to add value and how to value their time, and how you've described it with think about actually what you do and all of the bits that are a part of delivering this, even though the families or the children are only there for this set of time, I'm actually doing this and this and this and this as well. That is how some, usually the more structured business savvy organisations that have layers of people that are helping to organise it, that they definitely do that. So it's not something wild and crazy that Cathy's come up with. It is actually valuing your time and invoicing appropriately.
And although I haven't ever delivered the SAS program, I've had years of delivering group programs when I had my own private practice, that the reality of delivering a 60-minute group program is that there is at least one extra hour, possibly even an extra 150% time, extra hour and a half in terms of development and delivery and debriefing as well. So not to be shy when you're sitting there with the calculator is to actually model up quite a few scenarios and really work them through, and that will help you eliminate and zoom in terms of what you're going to be invoicing.
It's funny that point, Cathy. It's actually one of the unique benefits of SAS. If you were to do that with, I don't know, delivering a different program that doesn't have the structured resources that SAS has, you have more of that.
Triplet. For 1 hour of delivery, there would be at least 2 to 3 hours of development and debrief.
So that I know I say it in training, everyone's probably heard me say it, I don't need to stay up late colouring in, laminating and cutting out. You can
say it again.
Done.
You can say it again. Super relevant. Alrighty, tip number three, standard operating procedures to help efficiency. So you might call them policies and procedures, you might call them procedures. I just tend to shortcut it to SOPs, standard operating procedures. Some of you have heard me speak before will not be surprised when I describe these as the ticket to freedom. And by way of example, in the marketing webinar that we did, we talked a lot about documenting how you do things. And the marketing campaign is a great example where you can write up your SOPs, you can develop all of the marketing content and collateral, and pretty much rinse and repeat. I think we're going to be talking about that in a slide as well. So the same applies to the housekeeping aspect of delivering the SAS group. What can you be designing and documenting as you go along, particularly if you're in the early phases of delivering these groups? A lot of it will feel new and it might feel a little startling and overwhelming, all the bits you got to bring together. But for you to be writing that stuff down, checklists about intake, checklists about onboarding mums and dads, checklists about bringing the kids into the group, checklists about starting and closing the groups, all just as many recipes as you can. It will just make the next time and the next time and the next time so much smoother. So if you're kind of the lead with this program where you work, you might want to draw a timeline. I know I'm a fan of timelines, but it's really cool to see it visually and for you to start to visualize the workflow and the procedural bits that will be required at different points in the program. So I've already kind of given you some pre-program examples of what you can document and systemize, what in the delivery phase that you can document and systemize, and what you can systemize and document in the post, in that sort of follow-up phase as well. There's going to be admin systems that you need to develop. There's going to be facilitator, finance, business owner, marketing, bookkeeping. There's going to be all sorts of people that will be contributing to delivering the program, and they will each have their roles and responsibilities. If you can capture that, then it's going to be just smoother and more fun, and I suspect more and more impactful when you're completely in flow and present in delivering the content and enjoying that, knowing that all of the other housekeeping is somewhat under control, somewhat behind the scenes as well. You may even have some of the facilitators and some of the people delivering the program co-working with you on this. If it's feeling as though your shoulders are crushing as I'm talking through this slide, think about who you can delegate to or who you can co-work with to systemize the pre and the during and the post-delivery phases as well. You may be able to really optimize some of the data management or client management software that you have in your organizations to help you with some of this. I am a big fan of Trello. Trello is amazing for collaborative project management. You might want to Trello this. I think Trello is going to become a verb sooner rather than later. So I hope the speech pathologists listening are comfy with that. But once again, it's visual, it's collaborative. You can have documents up there. You can develop systems and recipes and checklists. So that could be a good, interesting place to help you get your head around this particular bit as well. It's also a great step for being able to potentially bring new people into the delivery because there are systems already there. So great for quality management, great for continual improvement, great for ensuring that it all continues to run smoothly whilst the staffing of the program might be changing as well. So once again, it's another example of some upfront investment, probably upfront mental investment and upfront time investment, but it could well pay off down the track when you've got it all smooth and documented and ready to go next time. Is there anything, Kathleen, you want to add to that?
I actually have a question, and this may just be my naivety to the variety of practice management software that's out there and the client appointment focused software. how does it go with groups, or are they tending to be set up for groups?
Yeah, you almost answered your own question. With the variety of practice management software programs, some do group management better than others. Some are really understanding that this is something that's needed in the marketplace. Others are saying, yeah, we're getting there, we're working on it as well. So if you have software and you're not sure, reach out to the help desk and reach out to the techie community and ask your questions and get the support that you need. It's not, with some of the Facebook groups that I'm involved in, it's not uncommon to see a question, I'm using such and such, how can that help me run groups? And then there'll be some really cool contribution and sharing in there as well. So good old Google might help you, but Facebook might actually help you quicker with some of those questions, and reach out to the owners of the software as well. So fair to say that that side of many of the systems I'm familiar with is maturing.
Thanks, Cathy.
Tip number 4, managing pre and post group time. And when I mean by group time, I mean in the 10 minutes before the group session starts and in the 2 minutes after the group finishes. So I know from running groups, and I've checked in with a couple of colleagues who are running the SAS Group and other kind of programs, this is the time danger zone. This is where, I don't know, there are just black holes of time where your checklists from the slide that we just talked about can be super, super good. There can sometimes be a little bit of a tendency to over-prepare, to over-collect and over-copy and over-prepare. When you've got those systems and checklists in place, the entry into the group session can be pretty neat. What you do sometimes have to manage, though, are those parent conversations and those kiddos getting a little hyped and super excited about the next session. And all of a sudden, the time before, that precious 10 or 15 minutes before, can disappear into some other clinically related conversation at the doorstop. So this is the doorstop conversation slide, which means that your planning might be rushed or not quite, or the room's not quite set up, or heaven forbid, there's other kids that also want a little piece of your time, and some mums with some questions, all super, super valid, but they're just not the questions you need in this precious pre-start the group time. And what you don't want is to be starting the group 5 or 10 minutes late and then having to compromise the magnificent group process and the group structure as well. So think about how you can manage the transition of humans from the front door into the room with the minimal fuss and minimal, yeah, fuss is the word. Let's just leave the word fuss there, I think. And it could be that you as the facilitator, this may not be your role. There might be somebody else who can do that better and kind of guard you as such. It sounds really mean, but I'm sure there's people listening who have just been hijacked on the way to the group room, and you just arrive perhaps not as present as you would like, and just even a few minutes kind of off the clock. And this happens at the other end of the group, the finish of the group for sure. If you can see the video now, Kathleen's head is just kind of bobbing around, bobbing around. And so what is it about the end of the group? Completely understandable. The kids are hopefully regulated in a just right kind of range and they're ready to exit. But the mums and dads and the carers who are coming for the pickup, they're curious. That's understandable. They want to know, how did he go? How did she go? What happened this week? What did you do? What do we need to practice? Tell me about this. Tell me about that. Did you tell her about that? And on it goes. And all of a sudden, this kind of finish on the hour is like a 15 past, 20 past, 25 past. And as the grown-ups are talking more and more, we know what those kiddos are doing out, don't we? They're kind of scampering around and they've emptied the Lego and they're chatting with Julie on reception, and on it goes. And you end up with a whole lot of behavior of the adults and the kids that you kind of got to compress and literally migrate out the door. So all of your circumstances are going to be super, super different. I totally get that. But the question I would love you to ask yourself and your delivery team is, how can we best manage the entry to the room? How can we best manage the exit from the room, ideally to the seatbelt moment? Okay, so it could be that you might need some admin support or some assistant support. It could be that you have to define and guard your role as the facilitator in that. And if you think about some of those other value add wacky suggestions I made, you know, maybe there is some work to be done in managing people's expectations about when they will be hearing about what's going on, what went on, what the homework, so on and so forth is. So it does sound really, really mean, but if you think back to that first slide about the costs of delivery, we could easily be talking about another 15, 30, 45 minutes just disappearing around the doorway.
That you haven't invoiced for.
That you haven't invoiced for, but it's also the mental tax of this. And whilst we're super keen to stand and talk about the kids and the program, I'm questioning the time and place that that happens in. Have you had feedback along these lines from providers, Kathleen?
It doesn't tend to be a topic that people bring up to discuss. It's usually, I don't know, I want to say a higher level thing that will come to me for discussion. But I know that that happens. It does get brought up in training.
Yeah.
And what we do spend some of the time in the training course talking about is how to predict and prevent those kind of things, why we set up the parent group meeting in a certain way. Things like when, I'm going to use the parent group meeting as an example, it's probably a good easy one on the top of my head. Parents that are wanting to talk either during the parent session or after the parent session on topics that are not SAS related, how to manage that, how to manage that, and how you as a service are going to do exactly what you're talking about. But we don't talk about it in the depth that you are, or in relation to the impact on the bigger viability of the program. You know, if you've allocated so many staff hours in your budget to this, but they're actually doing a third more, and the families end up getting, it's kind of like can be crossing over into other service streams too, from SAS Group to personal counselling. Maybe there's a different bucket of funding or, a different way to deal with it. So it does come up, definitely, in different ways.
So permission granted to defend your time and to defend your energy pre-group in those precious 15 minutes, and probably more importantly, defend your time and energy when the group closes. When it closes, it should really be closing, and there should be other times and places for when everyone gets up to date with the goings on that took place. So yeah, a tricky complex one, but well worth really investing some robust discussion. Honest, robust discussion. Yeah, definitely. Alrighty, tip number 5 for profitability. You'll be really pleased to know I'm not going to talk a huge amount about this because there is a whole separate webinar on some marketing tips that is just going to sort of slot in here, but this slide needed to be in here by way of completion, sense of completion. So the key message from that other webinar is to really get comfy with investing your time to design quite a significant marketing campaign. So we're using really business words here, a marketing campaign. And when all of that is done, if it's done in the way that I'm hoping you will invest in, imagine being able to decide the date of the next SAS program and pretty much change the dates in your marketing campaign. You might have to change venue and staff, I don't know, but rinse and repeat, that you can almost hit play. You've got all of your scripts ready to go. You've got your Facebook images, your Instagram images, you've got your blogs and your stories, you've got your email campaign. we really got sophisticated in that marketing webinar. So if that's kind of lighting you up, go and have a listen and a look in there as well. The reason that this adds to profitability, you've already figured this out, I know. It's about you don't have to redo the whole campaign. So you don't have to put time and mental energy into how to advertise the next one, because you're really going to reuse what you've already done. And not just once. You can change the date as many times as you run the program, and pretty much, certainly cast your eyes over it, pretty much rerun those marketing campaigns time after time after time. You'll get more bored with them before anybody else. You've got to remember that your future customers probably haven't seen it before. And if they have, if you are worried about them having seen it before, that's great. You're building brand awareness, you're building familiarity, and you're building memories for them. Oh my gosh, they're running it again. Our kiddo did that last year. It was great. You're building some emotion and memory that they may share that post on to other people who they believe would benefit from participation in the program as well. So yes, saving time, saving money, because you can change the date and hit go once again. We talked about the main takeaways in this other webinar. We talked about outcomes-based messaging. So you're not so much selling the features of the SAS program, you're selling the benefits of it. We also talked about identifying your ideal client avatar, who they are and who knows them. We talked about a 6-week marketing campaign so that you've got plenty of time to fill those spots in the program. We talked about your website and how to leverage that. We talked about content marketing and how beautiful that is for educators and allied health professionals. We talked about a social media or digital marketing strategy. We talked about helping referrers make it super, super easy to remember and understand about this program, why you do it, why it is so super, super cool. And we also talked about engaging with or developing a marketing team and training your current team to sell. Yeah, that might be making you feel a little kind of shivery, but we kind of pulled that apart with scripts and being able to offer invitations in-house to your current clientele as well.
Cathy, just to remember, I'm just going to put what you just said in a different context for our schools and educators who listen to these, because they've got to meet their budgets and all of that, just the same as we need to make things financially viable in a private world setting.
Yep.
That things like the marketing, having your team sell, that can be the same as having your team messaging about the program to the families and to the kids, so that they're all happy when next term they're all enrolled in SAS. It's sort of the same thing in a different context.
It's exactly the same thing. It's just me as a coach kind of slapping on the top some more commercial businessy type language. You know, many of the people I talk with day in, day out are shocked to bits that in fact when they're talking about kids coming in and engaging with programs, that is in itself a sales conversation. It's just about where it ends up. But they never think of it. Yeah, they don't think of it as a sales conversation. It's a suggestion or a recommendation, or there's evidence for, and we wrap it up in all our own educator and therapy language. But cold hard fact is that, you're making a suggestion where there will be an exchange of value of the program for money. That's probably just got people back on the heart palpitations. I might need that box of chocolate slide again. I've also got here in my notes how this slide kind of circles back to that slide about developing the SOPs and being able to document this, and maybe even be able to document some of that training that some of your team might need to be super comfy and super effective about marketing and messaging the program and the outcomes to parents, to carers, to other educators, to other allied health professionals, and maybe even to the kiddos themselves if there's a little bit of hesitation sitting at that level as well. So I guess this slide is about, imagine if you didn't have to do all of the marketing yourself. Imagine if you had systems, if you had scripts, if you had marketing information, and if you had a team where all of that is coming together so that those spots, those precious, precious spots in the SAS group are filling with relative ease, and potentially even creating so much awareness and hype that you are running a second parallel program before you know it, or even pre-selling the next term, or however that you're going to be running it. I wish that for you.
For a lot of providers who do this stuff, that does happen.
Yeah, you hear about that? That's great. That's great. All righty. Anything else you want to add on this one?
No, Kathy, I think you've covered it well. And as you've said a couple of times, there is a whole nother hour webinar on this topic. So I think we're
steak
covered.
Knives. There's fries with this.
Steak knives.
That's a very Australian expression. Sorry, sorry for the internationals. Right, number 6 profitability tip is to automate your sales sequence. What I'm wishing for you is that it is somewhat effortless to get that exchange of SAS value for cash, for money. And what this one is all about is for you to potentially, I would say absolutely, have the program all paid up front. For some situations that is going to be completely doable, and it could even be not negotiable. That is the only way that it's possible to participate in the program. And this could well be a scenario for those families that are purchasing the program with you privately, or in the Australian scenario that they are self-managing their NDIS funds and have access to be able to kind of purchase the entire program as you've boxed it up with the chocolates from that slide earlier on. Increasingly, I'm hearing about the leverage of technology, and that there are payment gateways on websites, at least to take a deposit or to potentially even pay the full amount. I'm also hearing increasingly about the use of third-party payment gateways. Eventbrite, try booking. You're going to have something locally in your neck of the woods that you may like to at least explore. What I'm kind of a little cautious on, and I know it's probably the default, is to send out the invoice and then to sit and wait for it to be paid. And some of those invoices can sit there and not quite be acknowledged and not quite acted on, and you're left in a bind about whether that kiddo starts the program when in fact the invoice was supposed to have been paid 10 days prior or whatever. So you will get what you tolerate in terms of unpaid invoices. The other way that you could consider perhaps running interference on that last scenario is to set up direct debit, and that there might be weekly direct debit payments. There's a whole host of providers that can set that up with you, a whole host of platforms, sorry, that you can purchase their processing on that front. You might want to get people's credit cards and directly debit that, but you've just got to make sure you're totally compliant and safe with storing those credit card details as well. And once again, some of the practice management, client management software systems manage that a whole lot better than others and can make that really, really smooth. But you actually, no, before I go on, I just want to come back to that point about taking a deposit. You might have a phase in your marketing campaign that is about expressions of interest and secure your spot now. We, make a prepayment, make a deposit. You really want to know as soon as possible who is absolutely wanting to be in there and that they will pay to hold their spot. So that could be something that you could think about introducing as well if you haven't as well. I also hear a little bit about a deposit, and that there might be an initial payment and that there might be another payment during the program as well. I'm also hearing a little about some of the very time-consuming and complex arrangements about billing in portions, and that might be required for the insurance schemes that you're needing to be compliant on. At the end of the day, that is not what I would describe as ideal. That is time-consuming, and you're kind of just hoping that payments are processed and that you don't have to make the decision about someone perhaps stopping because the payment has been problematic. That is just, not a situation I would want any of you to be in as well. And I guess this circles around inevitably to having a service agreement or having a contract or a terms and conditions, whatever you call it in your business, that completely outlines how you're going to work together with the child's decision maker around the money, around the confidentiality, around the timing of all of these business aspects of participating in the SAS program as well. I would love to ask right now, I know I'll never get the answer, but hands up, who has a service agreement specific service agreement for the SAS program? I'd be really, really curious to know. So I think the message on this slide is you will get what you tolerate. If you're still chasing funds and the program is done, that is highly problematic. I'm almost breaking out in hives at the mere thought of that suggestion. What are your thoughts, Kathleen?
One thing I know that we are about to put out, or that will be soon available for our SAS providers, is an NDIS example service agreement.
Great.
So there'll be an example which I'm sure can be adapted for non-NDIS services as well, or at least give you a template to start to build your own.
I think at that absolute instant, we've been put on pause and people are looking for the portal for that document. We should probably wait for them to come back. I think that would be amazing. It can be quite it can be quite a moment of uncertainty as to what to have in those sorts of agreements, and the overwhelm can spike quite quickly, which means that sometimes you just don't get it done, and then you're left on the fly without having to explain things and make quite complex decisions and uncomfortable and awkward decisions about the way forward when things just haven't gone smoothly, and invariably there'll be one or two clients in every group that it just doesn't always go smoothly. So I think that's a tremendous resource, and it's also just stepping forward with the right amount of assertiveness to kind of emphasize the seriousness and emphasize the value and emphasize the outcomes, and really help frame and provide a context for the parents and the decision makers in bringing their kids forward to participate in this program as well. So
and I think also a similar document could be used even for families who are not actually handing over money, if it's a fully funded service, or
absolutely,
you could adapt it and make it so there's still a level of commitment to, this is what I'm signing up for, this is what's involved. Yep. I know definitely some SAS providers have different versions of that to help with engagement and commitment throughout the program and expectations.
Yep. Absolutely. And service agreement, whilst it's a term that's used here in Australia, you in your organisation may come up with terms that are just more descriptive and friendlier, even how we will work together. There's all sorts of ways that you can make it really fit your organisational culture and make it as a really positive, this is how we're going to work together, this is our professional relationship going forward. And you may save yourself a whole lot of headaches by kind of having a good group think about what the name and the content, but most importantly, the purpose of that particular document is.
I can imagine some secret agent espionage themed names coming out for their SAS agreement.
Yep, I reckon you're 100% right on that one. All right, so there's always already been a bit of a secret release that there's going to be some documents arriving probably at the time that you're listening to this or shortly after that you can dig into. So we'll get to some of those documents in a tick as well. So I do know that it can be humanly possible to get funding for the kids to come in and complete the SAS program. It's going to come from many and varied sources that you will be the best person who knows locally what might be available. It might be that there is a phase for you as the lead or the business organization or business owner to be actually able to direct parents to where they can go, and you may have a role in documentation and quoting and explaining and helping them apply for some of those funds as well. So that's going to be a hard one to capture, but once you've done it a few times, it also could be something that you could have some support documents and some systems around as well. So it sort of comes back to that chocolate box slide. What is in the program? What is the value? What are the features? What are the benefits? Yep, this is the price, but this is our experience and the outcomes that can kind of be anticipated as well. You certainly can't guarantee, you certainly can't promise, but you do have the experience to be able to suggest the why, the value, the outcomes, the rationale for why this particular kiddo is so beautifully placed in this group program as well. Certainly here in Australia, this is the slide where we get a little Aussie-centric, but you're going to be able to apply it for sure. There's the Medicare scheme, which is the government scheme. It could be that there is some opportunity. I'm thinking in particular under the Better Access to Mental Health program that has an individual and a group element to it as well. So if you haven't checked out the details, the line items, the length of sessions and the compliance, it could be good to kind of freshen up on that as well. That might be something that can support some kids coming in. Private health networks here in Australia, Kathleen, you're going to have a lot more current knowledge on the extent to which there is some funding sitting in those buckets.
It's region by region, really, Cathy. Yep. So some they put out for tenders for you to apply for certain things. I know we've had a couple of providers be successful in that with, I can't remember, but let's just say child and family mental health in a certain region where they'll then be funded to deliver services and they popped SAS in their suite of services.
Okay. So once again, a reason to network locally, find out what your local primary health network is offering at the moment. And if it's not now, to kind of know what some of those funding cycles might be and to make a bit of a note to kind of reconnect prior to the next one. The NDIS, I guess, is the big one. And where do you start? Where do you finish, actually, on this particular front? But what I was absolutely rapt to see from Kathleen was that the SSTI have actually produced a document that has really specific NDIS line items that can actually appropriately be used at different phases in the group and by different professionals as well. So that is an absolutely amazing document. In just 1 or 2 pages, you get a snapshot of all the line items and how they can be described and used in the intake process, in the group process, in the parent and teacher coaching elements and feed forward sessions, and also post as well. So if you're engaging with participants who have the NDIS funding, it is completely and utterly your responsibility to understand what the current price guidelines are and to completely and utterly understand your compliance against your agreement with the Quality and Safeguards Commission and against the NDIA, and in delivering those price guide items. I just want to say that at the timing that we're recording this, there is about to be quite a few changes in the price guide, and in particular there are going to be some specific discipline variance in the prices. Psychologists are going to be priced a little bit differently, and there's also going to be a little bit of difference across the states. So that onus is completely on you, but yeah, look out for that document as well.
I just might add, Cathy, you may be about to say this, but the notes that Cathy's just said around the needing to comply with the certain item numbers and things like that, that's for our SAS providers. If the family is self-funded and you're just providing a one-off invoice for the overall program, then that's not something you need to worry about. Just in case
True.
That's only for people who are registered NDIS providers or part of a consortium, is my understanding.
Plan managers may also need some of those numbers as well.
Yeah, so it's good resources to give to your local planners and coordinators. Yeah.
Yep. But if you're invoicing to a participant who is plan managed, then they might need some of those items as well. But you guys are awesome and brilliant, and you will manage all of those requirements based on who you're invoicing. So yeah, super cool document. So check that one out for those engaged with seeking NDIS funding. Now, we also, Kathleen gave a super good heads up, I think, on the previous slide about the documents that are going to be available from the SSTI. There's going to be some support letters. There's going to be an example of a service agreement. There's also, are we actually really allowed to say all of these? Yes?
Do you mean on the webinar?
Yeah, on the webinar.
Yeah, so very soon we'll be providing, they already have a support letter for having the program to support it being a reasonable and necessary inspection for the child against their approved goals. But we're enhancing that. And as Cathy said, there'll be a service agreement example template, a review progress outcomes report template using the NDIS buzzwords and categories you need, and an example of how you may choose to put forward the line items for the different components of the program, you know, subject to approval by the planner and matching the child's goals, etc.
Yep. Amazing. That is such a helping hand. I absolutely salute the SSTI for developing that. That is a super practical resource. And for those who aren't engaged with the NDIS, go and have a good look at those documents, because the layout, the language, the concept, I am sure you will be able to wrangle it to meet your needs locally and with the funding agencies that you're engaged with as well. So that is the 7 tips. I really hope that they have been interesting and useful, and you've been able to pick those cherries out based exactly on what you need right now. So I can't come to your business and talk you through this. I can't make these changes. I can't sneak in between your ears and get you thinking differently around the money side of delivering the program. But I can give you 5 seconds, 10 seconds of peace and quiet so that you can flick back through the notes that I hope that you've been writing, and to pick out the bits that really resonate. What I would like for you is to have perhaps 3 key actions on the back of this webinar that you are actually going to kind of bring forward into your list. So I'm not going to sing, you're just going to have some nice quiet thinking time. It would actually be useful if I counted to 10 seconds at this point, wouldn't it? Kathleen's laughing. Oh, well. All right, that feels like about 10 seconds. After administering all those standardized tests for 30 years, I've got perhaps a distorted view of 10 seconds. Right, so we can't come to you and make it all happen. We can support you from afar and provide you with ideas and really cool support documents. So you have to make this profitability happen. And this slide is about perhaps the behavioral, the actual actions that you need to do to make the 3 takeaways from that previous slide spring to life. So are you going to book these into your diary? Are you going to bring them to a team meeting in 2 or 3 weeks' time? Are you going to go and look in the portal for those documents that we've alluded to on a couple of slides back? Are you going to go and check out the marketing webinar? Are you going to go and think about how you might look at the pricing and what's in the chocolate box and how you can value add? And are you going to kind of be practicing saying to yourself the price of the new price of the particular program based on the extra things that really are demanded in delivery, but you're also value adding as well. So this slide is about your actual behaviors. What is it that you're going to do super specifically to get this profitability lift? I'm going to give you a moment to write those things down. Alrighty, that is me, done and dusted, Kathleen. Anything else you would like to add?
I'd like to add a big thank you to you, Cathy, for this webinar on the 7 tips for financial efficiency. I think it's a really great selection of tips and tricks to help people feel not only a little bit more comfortable with this space, but to know there's something practical that they can action to make sure that things are viable or profitable depending on their context, certainly within budget in some contexts.
Yes, literally in budget.
Yeah, so thank you very much. It's fantastic, and I think a very good lead into later on in the year us also having an accountant talking about some of the nitty-gritty numbers and spreadsheet things that you mentioned earlier.
Great, absolutely marvellous. Alrighty, let's leave it there. Go forth and be profitable and proud. And yeah, I look forward to kind of connecting with you all next time.
Thank you, Cathy.